never seen myself as just one thing, and I made sure no one else could either. By staying true to myself, making my own path, rising above expectations, and opening the door for others to be their true selves. The first spirit, made with VSOP Cognac, finished in bourbon casks, Martell Blue Swift, soar beyond the expected.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I am 𝐂𝐎𝐍, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show. As always, fueled by my friends at Martell Cognac. This evening, I'm having some Martell Blue Swift VSOP, and it's been a long day, so I actually started drinking before you guys. But that is not going to cause me to forget that I have to tell you guys, as always, nothing that I share with you this evening should be misconstrued as financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, nowhere in the world, right? It's all about information, conversation, and education, right? Season 3, episode 26, right? And recently, a lot of people have been messaging Crypto Caribbean's page, messaging me directly and saying, hey, I'm now getting into this crypto thing. Someone shared your podcast with me. It's amazing, but it's a little heavy for me. Like I don't know where to even begin. So I've been trying to send them back to all the old videos, but apparently, some people just like shortcuts, right? So we're gonna start from the very beginning this evening, right? And we're gonna talk about what is Bitcoin, and I'm gonna try to answer as many questions as possible. And I'm gonna start with some of the more frequently asked questions, some of the more what to call them, the more aggressive, some of the more aggressive commentary around what Bitcoin is, the value proposition of Bitcoin and crypto. And I think, like I said, it means we have to start from the very beginning. What is Bitcoin? I think nobody should come into this space, start attacking this space without understanding what started it all, right? Bitcoin is the first and largest cryptocurrency. It is the one that created it all. It was created in 2008, 2009. It went live, created by individual entity group under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. And it was initially created, motivated by the fallout in the global financial crisis of 2008, right? A lot of people have tons of questions. What is Bitcoin? What is it about? Is it money? Is it real? Does it have value? Does it waste energy? Is it going to cause global warming? Blah, 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 blah. Right? So we're going to jump right into it. Let me shout out everybody in the chat. Yes, Stephen, Twilly. I had to brush up on my Japanese. Yeah, like I said, I started drinking before the podcast, right? It's been a long day. Y'all excuse me. But yeah, I think the first thing I want to really start touching is Bitcoin, because people use the word Bitcoin interchangeably, and technically it's a few different things, right? So people say Bitcoin when they're talking about the network, people say Bitcoin when they're talking about the token, and people say Bitcoin when they're talking about the blockchain, right? So Bitcoin with a capital B is a protocol for decentralized peer-to-peer network that creates consensus without needing a central authority to provide trust, right? What that basically means is the Bitcoin protocol is a means for having peer-to-peer agreement without the need for a centralized authority or an intermediary, right? Most people have envisioned that to mean, because Bitcoin is a currency as well, people think that the without intermediary means only banks, and ultimately Bitcoin was created to get rid of banks. But we're going to get into that a little bit more in a short while. The next Bitcoin, when you see Bitcoin with a small b, a common b, that is usually referring to Bitcoin, the token, and that's the currency that is issued on the platform, on the protocol, as a reward to miners for the proof of work process, right? What a lot of people have commented about proof of work, about its impact on the environment, energy uses, all these kind of things. But what you have to understand is that the proof of work consensus mechanism is what is used to secure the platform and to validate transactions on the platform. So it's not just using energy for using energy's sake. And then the blockchain is basically just a public ledger where the network records transactions. Now, a lot of people like to talk about blockchain as if it's some new revolutionary technology that is coming to change the whole thing. Blockchain is not necessarily new technology, and blockchain is not even necessarily the most important aspect of Bitcoin and the whole protocol associated with Bitcoin, right? So the foundational components of Bitcoin, that is the protocol and the system, encompasses a few things. So the blockchain, like I said, the ledger, right? The consensus algorithm, the proof of work algorithm that secures the protocol as well as validates transactions on the network. The native digital currency, Bitcoin with a small b. Cryptography, right? The hashes and digital signatures that allow for people to validate transactions. The hashes are used to encrypt the data on the system. So cryptography is a big part of it. Hence the term cryptocurrency, because the cryptographic hashes is what is used to send the data associated with the currency, the Bitcoin, lowercase b. Then there's the peer-to-peer network, right? Which is the network, which is made up of every single computer, every single node that is running the Bitcoin network, spread all over the world. And that network continues to grow as more and more people come on board this system. And then the open source development. So that is the core software and the implementation protocols that all the developers work on and build other projects on top of the original layer, the original Bitcoin protocol layer. Listen, Stephen, I try to go back and remind myself of all these things on a regular basis, because I think it's important for us to remember the original intent, because a lot of people are attracted to the space because they see the price action, because they see the opportunity to make money, but we have to understand the original intent. And I think when you understand the various components and what the potential is for Bitcoin as a protocol, you will understand that it is a lot more than money. It's a lot more than currency, right? And we're going to get, I guess we could start talking about it now. Bitcoin is a means, or the Bitcoin network is a means, a decentralized means of humans being able to communicate value, right? That's basically what it is. Value communication is something that has been around in the human experience since the dawn of time, right? Money or value transfer, value communication seemingly even precedes language. It precedes writing, right? If you go back and check, most of the earliest forms of writing in human history are actually ledger inputs, right? So it's almost like writing was created as a means to verify, or as a means for tracking that communication of value. So money preceded written communication. And I think that is an important point to understand as we understand the evolution of money, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the fact that cryptocurrencies, crypto assets, Bitcoin as a currency is a new form of currency, and most of us have only lived in this current environment where fiat money, paper notes, coins are the only money that we've ever known, right? But money goes back way beyond that, from bartering as a form of value transfer to seashells, stones, feathers in some societies. A lot of different things have been used as money, right? And I think to really get to the meat of that, I want to talk a little bit about what is money and what makes money money. Yo, what's up, Afia? So, don't study my Latin there. So what makes money money? It must be divisible. It must be durable. It must be recognizable. It must be portable, and it must be scarce. So let's break down Bitcoin as it relates to these various properties, right? So is it divisible? Yes. One Bitcoin can be divided up to 8 decimal places, right? So one Satoshi is 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So a Bitcoin is even more divisible than a dollar is. A dollar can only be divided up to 100 times, right? To its smallest value, which is 1 cent, right? Digitally, I guess you could have point something of a cent and that kind of thing, but that is not usually done. Banks round it off to the nearest cent. So, and I think that's important because a lot of people hearing about Bitcoin for the first time feel overwhelmed by the current price and think to themselves, wow, how am I going to buy a Bitcoin when it's $29,000 for US for a Bitcoin? But you can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. You could buy less than $1 worth of Bitcoin, as long as the fees applicable to access that is something that you're willing to pay. So a lot of people get caught up around the cost. What I would say, if you're interested, and again, this is not financial advice, do your own research, but you can buy $1 worth, you can buy $10 worth. If you was gonna buy a soft drink, if you were gonna go out and spend some money on some alcohol, except if it's Martell, buy some Bitcoin with that instead. If it's Martell, buy some Martell instead, right? That is alcohol advice, not financial advice. Then let's talk about durability. More and more, the world is becoming digitally native, right? So Stephen giving me the play-by-play there. It's currently $29,415 for a Bitcoin. So durability. More and more, the world is becoming digitally native, right? Would something recorded digitally be around next 5 years, next 10 years, next 20 years? Would a paper note be around next 5 years, next 10 years, next 20 years? We don't know. So for example, here in Trinidad and Tobago, we recently changed the look, feel of our paper notes. So anybody who had the old paper notes had to trade those notes in for the new note. If you forgot, if you had some notes stashed somewhere and the period passed, that's lost. So if you had a 10,000 stacked away, your granny had a 10,000 stacked away, she passed away, you get the house, you clean up, you find this $10,000 worth of $100 bills from 1990. I'm not even talking 50 years ago. I'm talking about just 30 years ago. Let me say 10 years ago, from 2010, 2013. That money is of no use to you anymore, right? And that's the case in most countries. A lot of people talk about putting their money under their mattress, burying their money in their backyard. As the next thing, you bury it in the backyard, the worms go with it. So durability, yes, check. So Bitcoin is divisible, it's durable, recognizable. So Bitcoin has grown into its recognizability, right? And it continues to grow, because 10 years ago, nobody wanted to accept Bitcoin for payments, for anything. Nobody cared about it. Nobody found there was value in it. And that is why someone had to start the ball rolling. That's why the most expensive pizzas in the history of the world, those 2 pizzas purchased for 10,000 Bitcoin, will forever and ever be the most expensive plate of food ever purchased. Because as Bitcoin becomes more recognizable, as it becomes more acceptable, and the value goes up, it just becomes more and more expensive to think about, to even conceive parting with 10,000 BTCs for 2 pizzas. But if that wasn't done all those years ago, we might not be where we are now. We might not be at $29,415, like Stephen just told us, right? So Bitcoin continues to grow in its recognizability. Portability. So a lot of banks, governments, payment networks continue to engage in digital currency. So online payments, payment apps like PayPal and Apple Pay and all these kind of things. However, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are the first digitally native currencies, right? What does that mean? They only exist digitally. They were created digitally. All other forms of digital money are meant to represent physical fiat currency, right? So in terms of portability, Bitcoin can be moved across the world at the flip of a switch almost instantaneously. You can send $1 from Trinidad to China in a matter of seconds, the same way you could send $100, the same way you could send $100 million, the same way you could send $1 billion if you have it, from Trinidad to China in a matter of seconds, minutes for the most, right? So, and then also your Bitcoin is stored on your wallet, whether it's a hard wallet or a soft wallet or even an exchange wallet, where in the first 2, you custody your own Bitcoin, which means you can carry it. So if you have a ledger device, or you don't even need a ledger device, but if you have a ledger device, you put that in your pocket, you jump on a plane, You could take your Bitcoin with you wherever in the world you go. Now, a lot of people compare Bitcoin to gold, right? And yes, gold has a lot of the similar properties: divisible, very durable, recognizable for sure, but portable, not so much. And that is why, in the first place, gold was traded for fiat government issued notes in terms of carrying out transactions, because you can imagine having to buy a house in Trinidad and Tobago with gold, right? So you have to go down to the bank with your wheelbarrow. They have to pile your gold up onto your wheelbarrow. Then you have to take it, drop it in your car, and then take it down to the person who is buying, who you're buying the house from. Far less if you were migrating, if you decided you're going to move from where you currently live to another country. How do you even transport that gold, right? So I think gold has some failings as it relates to the portability, and then as it relates to scarcity. Now, fiat currency is scarce, and scarcity here we're talking about as it relates to demand, right? Because something could be very, very prevalent. Like we see the governments across the world printing tons of new money, putting them into the system, but it continues to be in high demand. So what we see happening is inflation, right? So in terms of scarcity, Bitcoin is the only asset that I know of, that I could think of, that they aren't creating any more of, right? So there will only and always be 21 million Bitcoin, right? Now, when I was growing up, my grandmother, my grandparents, my parents always used to say, buy land. Land will spoil. They're not making any more of it. But what we've seen across the world, in Dubai, we see them backfill and make all this new land. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, where Westmoreland is, where Movie Town is, that is all reclaimed land. So maybe it's possible to make more land, right? But even land has challenges with some of the other properties. So portability, you can't take your land to the US with you if you decide to move to the US, right? And then the next thing about land or most other assets is that the government can have a lien on your property. Like people say, land is always valuable. But I always say, right now, land in Westmoreland is in high demand because of its proximity or whatever is the case. But if the government were to introduce a tax that the people who own land in Westmoreland have to pay 25% annually on the value of their property, all of a sudden that land would become less in demand and obviously less valuable, because now the people who are there would be looking to get out, because nobody trying to pay 25% on, let's say, their $3 million property as a tax every year. That not making sense. And then who they're going to sell it to? Who trying to buy that property to pay $750,000 a year in taxes? So as it relates to the potential value of land, it all comes down to how we perceive the value of that land. Because even receiving that land for free may not be beneficial. Because if you get a land for free, right, $3 million property for free, but come the end of the year, you have to pay the $750,000 tax on it. Is it free? Is that even desirable free? So I think when we are talking about how valuable something is as an asset, I think we have to contemplate it as it relates to these various properties. So is it divisible? Is it durable? Is it recognizable? Is it portable? Is it scarce? Is it yours? Right? Another thing about crypto is the ability to custody your own money, right? Now, in most cases, well, unless your money on an exchange, right? Not your keys, not your coins. Remember that. Georgie, what's up, brother? So, in most instances, the money in your bank account that you work hard for, that you deposit, right, is not yours. It's because you don't have access to it at any point in time. We saw it recently with big companies being caught up in the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, big companies being caught up in First Republic Bank collapse, where they cut off deposits, the ability to withdraw your deposits, right? Because people came to get what is theirs, right? The bank shut their doors to not give people what is theirs. So is it really yours? If tomorrow there's a run on Banga Bank anywhere in the world, I'm going to call no bank name, and they are unable, because we talked about this previously in another episode, banks operate on something called fractional reserve banking, right? Which allows them to loan out a percentage of or a multiple of the deposits that they have on hand, right? In the US, up to recently, the reserve rate was 0%. I think here in Trinidad and Tobago is something like 14%. So for every $100 that is deposited to banks in Trinidad and Tobago, the banks only have to keep $14. They could lend out $86 on every $100. So let's say 10 people deposited $10 to their bank account. The bank loaned out 86 of those dollars, and then 5 of those people go to get their $10. The bank doesn't have it. The bank has enough cash to give one person, and another person will get $4. So is it really your money, right? And I think people always underestimate and undervalue that aspect of crypto. Like, we just doing it and we're not understanding that there is tremendous value in simply being able to custody your own money, right? Now, this is not my words, right? But this is something that I think was said better than I have been able to say it. And it's that Bitcoin is a platform of trust, right? Currency just happens to be the first application. Again, Bitcoin is a decentralization applied to the human need to communicate value. And that's a statement made by Andreas Antonopoulos, who is a brilliant communicator around Bitcoin. If you have the opportunity to listen to any of his videos, take his course, I mean, I think that is money well spent. Not all these people who want to charge $1,200 for a day course on Bitcoin. That's madness, right? They have too much information about this subject online for free that you can access for free. Just use Google, guys. Just use YouTube search, right? Before you go and spend $12,000 on learning to trade, you cannot learn to trade in a day, first and foremost, right? So stop doing it. Now, that I think touches on two elements around what is Bitcoin in the first place, how Bitcoin has value as money, and does it achieve the 5 properties of money. But I think a lot of people still ask the question, does Bitcoin have intrinsic value, right? And I just talked about being able to send $1 from here to China for a few cents, sometimes even less, in a matter of seconds. What people don't understand is that cross-border payments, the cross-border payment industry, is a huge industry, right? Now, in this, these are actually old figures. This is 2020. In 2022, the total volume of cross-border transactions was $26 trillion with a T, right? And the transaction cost associated with it was over US $120 billion. And the average settlement time was 2 to 3 days. Now let's just think about that. If transferring 23 or $26 trillion raises value of $120 billion just in 1 year, and we have a decentralized protocol that is able to do the same volume of transactions in, I wouldn't even call it a fraction of the time. Because if something used to take 2 to 3 days, how much would you pay to be able to do it in 2 to 3 minutes? Right? Just think about it. Just think about how many people use ships to travel the world now, right? I'm not talking about a cruise. I'm not talking about a cruise where you're seeing the world. I'm talking about you want to go from Trinidad to the UK. How many of you are booking a ship, which might be way cheaper than a flight? Why are you not doing it? Because it's taking 2 to 3 weeks to get to England using a ship. But you rather pay a premium to get there in a few hours, in less than a day. So if given the option, how much do you think all these banks, individuals, businesses, everybody would pay to be able to send money, trillions of dollars across the world in a matter of seconds? You think they would pay a premium? Yes. And the great thing about Bitcoin is Bitcoin doesn't charge a premium. Bitcoin actually charges a discounted rate, right? So is there value in a network that allows you to transact trillions of dollars worth of business in seconds, in minutes, anywhere in the world, real time, that has settlement finality attached to it? How much would you pay for that? If you knew that when somebody deposits money in your account from the US, your mom sending money back for you, you sending money back to your parents, that they get that money in a matter of seconds, and it costs you a fraction of that cost, what would you pay for that? And that's why most people don't understand what El Salvador saw in making the decision to make Bitcoin legal tender. It wasn't just about the capital appreciation. It wasn't just about the price going up. It's the fact that 30% of their national GDP came from remittances, came from El Salvadorians living outside of El Salvador, sending money back to their family. And these people were spending upwards of 30% on fees for that money that is being sent. So that $100 that was being sent from the US back to El Salvador was reaching to somebody's mom as $70. Now, if that money could be sent not using Western Union, but using the Bitcoin Lightning Network, that mommy now gets $99.999. She's in El Salvador. Where do you think she's going to spend that extra $29.99? that extra $29 is now not leaving the country's economy via a foreign company, that is paying minimal taxes. Yes, they might be employing one or two people, but you think that extra $29 in each $100 is going to have benefit to that country's economy? Of course. And that was the main reason the global remittances business, just remittances, we're not talking about cross-border payments in total, we're talking about just remittances. It's a $400 million business. So is there value? You tell me. The next area that people tend to always come down on Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Everybody likes to talk about Bitcoin mining, and it uses so much energy, and it adding to global warming and all these kind of things. Does Bitcoin emit more waste than the airplane industry? Why nobody's saying let's cancel the airplane industry? Because we see value in being able to move around the world at a fraction of the time that it would have taken us. Yes? Have we even contemplated the cost associated with running our traditional financial system? Do you think that might be comparable or maybe even exceed the energy costs of Bitcoin? Now, I decided to try to figure out how much energy the global financial sector might be using. So I decided, you know what, let me go and check and see how many bank branches they might have in the US, for example, trying to find out how many bank branches they might have in the world in general. What is the cost, or what is the size of the average size of a bank branch? What is the energy usage of a branch of the average size? And my mind was blown. You all know we have almost 1 million bank branches in the world. The US have almost 100,000 bank branches. China has 228,000 bank branches. India has 210,000 bank branches. Using energy every single day, and we're just talking about the energy that is being consumed by the branches themselves alone. We're not talking about the energy being used for all the employees having to get to these bank branches on a daily basis. We're not talking about all the customers having to get to these bank branches. We're not talking about all the different ATM locations where they have where they're using energy. We are just talking about bank branches. Then we have to add credit unions. Then we have to add trust companies. Then we have to add investment banks, because that's just commercial banks. Those numbers are just commercial banks, right? Then we have to add the printers that print in these physical currency, these physical fiat currency. Then we have to talk about the paper and the plastic that is being used to print these currencies. Then we have to talk about all the CO2 being expended by all these security vehicles that have to move this money about. Then we have to talk about the offices of these security companies, because we need security, right? They don't see there as value in the Bitcoin network that secures the value on the Bitcoin network. They don't see value there. So leave the banks open. Why are you locking the banks? Why are you having security guards who are to try to fish when they lock themselves in the in the truck? They had to try to fish the door open, right? People in sure had to be going, what are you talking about there? Right? Why are we doing that? If we don't see value in protecting value, right? If that's a waste of money, why we lock in the banks? Why we, and this is my issue. We don't compare like for like. I think all the critiques, all the questions, all the information that people trying to get about Bitcoin, I think is valid. I think everybody should ask these questions. My only thing is that I think that we should be asking these questions not just of Bitcoin, but of everything that we engage in. Why we not asking the banks why we have all this paper that we churning out every single day? Signing documents, photocopying this, photocopying that. Because you know why? Because there is an absence of trust there. And the only way we know to mitigate against those fears around trust is by recording things physically. The Bitcoin blockchain records every single transaction. You don't need a ATM receipt that will fade after 3 months. You don't need a bank statement that's going to fade after 2 years. You don't need a bank statement that they can go in and make adjustments to after the fact. The Bitcoin blockchain allows for a decentralized, immutable, transparent record of every single transaction. Even if you don't know who the person is behind the transaction, you know what the transaction is. So you know what your wallet address is. You could always go back and check to see, oh, right, yeah, I forgot to send this money. You know you did it because you have the private key to sign all the transactions. And whether it's this year, 10 years ago, we could go back and look at the very, very first transaction on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, the very first block. And not just me, you, anybody who has access to the Bitcoin network can view these transactions. So my rebuttal to anybody who talks about the energy usage of Bitcoin is, do you think there is value in securing something of high value? Because if we really care about the environment, if we really care about energy consumption, we wouldn't have washers and dryers. We'd be washing everything in the sink, spin them, hang them up on the line, let the sun dry it. If rain fall like the last couple of days, you wait until the sun come out. You squeeze them again, and you go again. Right? The next thing nobody talks about is the fact that Bitcoin can be a final source or a final customer of a lot of energy that is wasted, because you don't need to mine Bitcoin close to where you need to expend the energy, because electricity energy can only be transmitted so far without having a diminishing loss, right? So most power plants have to be close to the cities that they generate energy for. But Bitcoin can go anywhere. You could mine Bitcoin from anywhere. You can mine Bitcoin from using solar energy out in the desert. You can mine Bitcoin using wind energy in the Arctic. You can mine Bitcoin like they intend to do in El Salvador, mining it using the energy from their semi-active volcano. You can mine Bitcoin. So this idea that Bitcoin is only using coal to burn energy, fallacy, right? Bitcoin might be the thing that drives us to get to using more renewable sources of energy, because you don't have to be anywhere specific to mine Bitcoin. And Bitcoin will always go to where the energy is the cheapest. So if solar energy is the cheapest, Bitcoin going there for it. Right? If hydro, that is the word. You see what I like, Stephen? If hydro energy is the most efficient, cheapest, Bitcoin going and find it where it is. So let's stop acting like somebody in a back room somewhere shoveling coal to mine Bitcoin. That's not what happened. Let's be real here. Big up the miners and keeping the thing safe. Yo, Issa, what's up, man? Stephen, what are you drinking? Stephen, will you tell me about water, boy? Hey, let me just touch base with the comments for a second. Yes, Stephen, ATM's charging $4 for a withdrawal, 75 cents for every single link transaction. It might be more, I don't know. Now they want to charge you for even online banking transfers outside of your bank. When you could use Bitcoin Lightning or Tezos or Algorand or Polygon and send that same value for a fraction of a cent? Come on, what are we talking about? What are we talking about, man? Guys, I'm a ranting here, dog. I'm a ranting here because the fact of the matter is Bitcoin, and I think here's a good time to say I was one of those people who came into Bitcoin as a skeptic, right? People used to talk to me about Bitcoin changing the world and blah blah. I'm like, what nonsense you telling me about change the world? As a matter of fact, the people who need Bitcoin the most do have no money to buy no Bitcoin, right? So we telling me even when Bitcoin was $3,000, 3,000 US dollars, I saying who could afford a $3,000 Bitcoin? Because back then I was thinking you had to buy a whole Bitcoin, right? And then I didn't understand the value proposition for people in parts of the world that don't have digital access to digital currency, online payments, who were paying 30% on remittances, the people who have currencies that were being inflated by hundreds of percent on a day, people who have poor performing banking sectors where banks fail every other week. I didn't understand that these people need a decentralized, immutable, censorship resistant, custody available currency. Because at any given day, their currency could lose all its value. We've seen it happen in Argentina. We've seen it happen in Nigeria. We've seen it happen in Zimbabwe, to the point where Zimbabwe is now looking to introduce a CBDC that is backed by gold to try to prop up their fiat currency because it's being so heavily inflated. So when we talk about Bitcoin loses value by 5-10% overnight, these people looking at us like, bro, what are you talking about 5-10%? My currency worth 100% less. My $100 could only buy $50 worth of thing, and by next week it could only buy $20 worth of thing. We've seen places like Venezuela where people just leave the money on the ground to blow away. People making baskets, hand baskets out of the old money because it has no value anymore. So we sit in our Western ivory towers and talk about, what Bitcoin can or can't do. Lebanon recently. Thanks, Stephen. So guys, as I always say, do your own research. You don't have to spend any money to do such research. If you have no money to invest in cryptocurrency, if you have no money to invest in Bitcoin, invest the time. Learn about it now, because you may find an opportunity through your knowledge search that gives you the opportunity to earn it, right? You might be able to work and be paid with Bitcoin. You might work for somebody and you say, hey, I see that you have a sign on your business saying you collect Bitcoin. You mind if I take my payment in Bitcoin instead of the 500 TTO is going to give me to cut the yard? I'll take some Bitcoin. You might be able to carry out some activities and get airdrop some free crypto. So before you go using your rent money, gambling with your savings to invest, do your research, learn about it, understand what you're getting into, understand what the opportunity is, understand what the challenges are, understand what the risks are, and make a way. Because like I always say, I believe adoption is inevitable. So where you want to be on the adoption curve is up to you, right? Yes, Stephen. I ain't gonna call no project name now, because them ain't paying me. But yeah, have mad airdrops out there, free bags as always. So guys, if there are no more questions, I'm gonna call it a day there. Feel free to follow Crypto Caribbean on Instagram, follow the channel on YouTube, like, subscribe, Crypto Caribbean TV. Hit me up, follow us on Twitter, Crypto Caribbean, crypto with a zero instead of a O, and ask your questions if you have any questions. You have questions and you're not asking the questions? Well, ask the question. We have questions. If you need Martel, you go down to your Massey supermarket, the alcohol aisle, you pass everything else, you skip past all them other cognacs, you get a Martel, you pick it up, you tell them I'll send you buy your thing. You ain't go get no discount, but they go smile at you and put it in a bag. No, seriously, all they have questions or you don't have questions? Do I ask me this all the evening, eh? Tilly, you are asking in a way. Anyway, guys. All right, okay. Now, serious people have questions, I feel. As we transition to a more digital world, do you think that Bitcoin is on its way to being more recognized as a trusted currency in the Caribbean? And if not, what can be done to expedite this process? I think definitely it's becoming more and more of a recognized and trusted currency, right? Just the adoption rate can tell you that. Just the price action can tell you that, right? I think you're seeing more and more businesses popping up. You're seeing more and more governments talking about it. We see more and more governments moving towards CBDCs, which basically try to take advantage of the cryptocurrency technology to build their currencies. I think there's a double-edged sword there, but I believe that ultimately CBDCs will be a gateway drug to decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. In terms of expedition and expediting that, it comes down to people in the region educating themselves. That's why we do this podcast. That's why we have the pages, because the more people learn about it, the more people understand it, the more people can feel secure in participating in it, right? What we need to understand is that there was a point where fiat currency or note currencies wasn't a thing. That was there was an adoption phase for that where people had to get used to seeing paper notes instead of gold bars or gold coins. And then we moved from paper notes to plastic cards, whether it be credit cards or debit cards, where that was not the thing. You pull up with a credit card and they say, yo, I'm not taking that. Real businesses saying they're not taking that, until people got more and more acquainted, more educated about it. And then we saw the adoption grow. So ultimately, I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take more and more education. All right. I love how you talk about the advantages of Bitcoin. What are the disadvantages? I would say the big challenge with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general look a lot like the advantages. So, for example, being your own bank. Now that sounds great, you being able to custody your own bank, blah, 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 blah. But that's also a drawback, because it have people who forget their Facebook password, their Instagram password, their email password every other day. And then they send an email to Gmail to reset their password. Bitcoin have no customer service department if you forget your private keys, right? So you have to be disciplined enough to record all the information about your private keys in a way that keeps it safe, in a way that keeps it available to you to access. Whether it is you memorize it, whether it is you tattoo it on the sole of your foot, whatever is the case. But I think that is one of the major disadvantages, especially in this early stage. I think as the technology grows, we will see easier ways for people to recall and record their private keys. But as of right now, we hear too much times about people who lost their keys, who digging up in a dump somewhere because they lost the computer that they had mined their Bitcoin on. So I think that's one of the big challenges. I wouldn't call it disadvantages. And then obviously, because the adoption isn't very high right now, you might, if you put all your money in Bitcoin, you might go to buy groceries and nobody accepting it, right? So you can't afford to eat. The volatility right now is very high. So if you're looking for short-term investment, you buy it today, next month it might be down. But over a 4-year period, you extend the investment time horizon, it has been the best performing asset in the world. Yeah, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer network. So you can trade Bitcoin with anybody who want to buy Bitcoin. What an exchange does is it brings together, it's a market that brings together a lot of buyers and sellers, so that you could always find somebody willing to buy at the price that you are willing to sell at. Or in most cases, you could find somebody willing to buy at the price that you are willing to sell at. That's the benefit of exchanges, but they are decentralized exchanges that only operate via code. You don't have to give custody of your Bitcoin to an entity to be able to trade your Bitcoin or your other cryptocurrencies. There are decentralized exchanges. Like, the man really had questions, but after I disrespect him, but I apologize, buddy. And yeah, what people don't understand is, whether it be a decentralized exchange, whether it be a centralized exchange, pooling of money creates a honeypot, right? Wherever value is pooled, you're going to find nefarious actors, you're going to find criminal elements looking to take advantage of that. That's why people rob stores, that's why people rob gas stations, that's why people rob banks, because there is a pooling of money and a pooling of value in those spaces, right? So an exchange, similarly, if there's a pooling of funds, they're going to be under attack. How can we continue to demystify Bitcoin and crypto in Trinidad and Tobago in our own space to contribute to making it more mainstream. If you understand, answer the question. I would say answer the questions as best as you can, or refer people to resources that have been beneficial to you. So I always tell people Crypto Casey on YouTube and Instagram. She's very good at breaking down Bitcoin very easily. Andreas Antonopoulos, very excellent from a technical standpoint. Michael Saylor has a very good understanding of, I would say, the macroeconomic views around Bitcoin. Robert Breedlove, excellent on understanding Bitcoin. It have this guy who's do this podcast called the Crypto and Cognac podcast. Check that out. He always have some real smart people smarter than him on talking about crypto, talking about NFTs, talking about the space in general. So yeah, just keep referring people. Their communities. We have the Crypto and Cognac podcast community where we share as much information as people need. Ask the questions. Somebody has the information. I myself, I'm not an expert on mining, but there are people in the group community who are good in mining. There are tons of communities like Omega, which is a great community, but more for, more advanced people because they talk a lot of technicals in there. But yeah, seek the information out, find a community, and just do your own research. If somebody asks you about it, bring it up in your groups. Ask people how many people looking at it, how many people talking about it, how many people thinking about it, how many people looking at jobs in the space, how many people looking at education in the space. Because just like there's so much value around the internet and internet spaces right now, it's the same way there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people educated in crypto and blockchain in general. Yeah. So guys, we just touched 1 hour easy. I am gonna rock back, chill, taking some NFL draft right now, see who is the number 1 guy, and yeah, chill out for the rest of the evening. As I said, hit me up in the DMs, Crypto Caribbean DMs, my personal DMs, Illuminati333 everywhere on social media, from Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, wherever you want to find me there. Yeah, send a question. I'll answer it if I can. If I can't, I'll send you to a resource that could help answer that question for you. I truly believe that the Caribbean has the talent, has the intellect to not just participate in this space, but to dominate this space. There's no reason why the next Mark Zuckerberg, the next Jeff Bezos can't come out of the Caribbean building the next big blockchain project. So that's why I want to be a part of. If I could be a part of that happening, then everything that I would have done every night on Thursday, 7 p.m. on YouTube would have been to a benefit. Shout out everybody else who is on the journey doing things in the space for the Caribbean. Stephen Hadid, Creator Labs, Wildflower, Z Labs, Omega, George, Nick, Huggins, Zoe, Joshua. I mean, so many people doing amazing things from the Caribbean. Big up the big boss himself, Gabriel Abed, the guy who got most of us into this thing by extension. So yeah, let's do it. Guys, adoption is inevitable. Be good, right? Illuminati out. Be blessed.